Hey there, how you going? My name is Mitch Cam. This is my second Svelte tutorial on reactivity. In the first video, what we covered was just setting a basic variable and having that variable trigger an update in the DOM or what the user sees on the page. What I'll be covering in this video is assignment of variables that are arrays and adding to that array, and then triggering a rebuild of that array so then the DOM or what the user sees will update on the page. The second part we'll be looking at is reactive declarations. So the way that I think about reactive declarations is kind of like tying two variables together. So when one variable changes, the other one triggers the rebuild that the user will see or in the DOM on the page. And lastly, we'll be looking at binding inputs as well. So if the user types something into a text box, it will update a variable in our backend for us. We'll be building a chat app in this lesson to demonstrate all these concepts. Just a simple little chat app here, messages coming through. You can type in your message. Here is my message. The characters will update through a reactive declaration. And when you click send, we can trigger a rebuild of that div which will now have 3 array items in it. And you can add us another message. And hit send, and it keeps on added on there. So let's jump into the lesson and have a look at reactivity in Svelte. Okay, step 1 is we'll jump onto a site and grab some starter HTML for the lesson. So I'm just grabbing it from mdbootstrap.com. All I've done here is just gone inspect element and then copied this HTML here and brought it across into my file and drop that in here. So what we'll just need to do, we've got, here's mine here. So we've got my message, other message. So let's just make 2 components, one component for your own message and a component for other messages, so messages from another person. So let's create 2 different Svelte components. So go message own, and let's create a message other. And let's just copy that content, drop it in here. This other message, drop it in here. So it's gotten rid of it. What we need to do is tell our app component here about these 2 new files. So let's just import message own, and we'll also import message other, and then we'll just drop those 2 components in here. Message own, message other. You can shorthand it or you can do both, but we'll other. So that'll bring those messages back. So we're back at square one, but now we've got it in some nice neat components. What we want to do is have this message be dynamic. So we want to bring in via a prop and send the content of the message to these, because every message is going to have different content in it. So let's just accept. Export keyword to say it's coming into this particular component. Let, we want it to be changeable, and let's just call it content. And instead of it saying my message, we want this component to print the content. So when we're rendering message own, we want it to print the content. And let's do the exact same thing for the message other content, and then instead of it saying others message, let's bring in the particular message for this rendered component. So that's those components all done. Beautiful. Okay, so rather than we're just printing each component at the moment, which is undefined because we don't have content. We'll put some dummy data in. So we've just got a variable here that's an array of objects with just some dummy chat data. What we'll do is we'll loop over this chat data in the actual div to render each item in that data set. So let's go each chat data as message, and we'll finish off that each. And what we want to do, we've got either a message own, which is your own message, or message other, someone else sent it. So let's just do a quick if check to see if message own is true or false. So let's go if message, which is from our loop here, message.own, which I'm getting from this here. So we're looping over each item, and then we've got a key in there of own. If message own, it's either true or false. So if it's true, and then we'll do an else. So otherwise, do this. So if the message is our own message, we'll render this component. Otherwise, it's someone else's message. So let's chuck in that bad boy there. Beautiful. That's that each loop now set up. What we'll do now is we'll need to pass through, because message own is expecting a content variable to be sent to it. And lo and behold, we have a content variable in our object here. So let's send that on through as a prop. So the way we do that is we say content, which aligns with the name of the variable, equals message.content, because that is the key in that object. And we'll just throw that into the other one as well. So each now has okay, I made a mistake. It should be own. Yep, and that's looking right now. So we've got own and other sending through. Cool, so what we'll do next is we'll work on the posting of a message. So when we type into this box here, we want to hit send, and it puts it onto the page for us with the other messages. What we need to do with that is this is the text area that we're typing into here. We need to, whenever we type into that text area, update and give us a variable that we can work with in Svelte. So let's add a new variable up here, and let's make it a let, because it's going to be changing obviously when we are typing into that text box. Let's go typed message, and let's just start it as there's nothing in it. And it's super simple. We just want this variable to always be equal to whatever is typed into this box. And all you need to do that is you bind. And then we say, what are we binding to from this particular HTML element? And let's go value. And then we need to tell it, what are we binding to? So let's bind it to this variable that we've got up here. Cool bananas. So now every time we type in here, it will be the same variable as what is in that typed box. So this is a cool little tip. If you ever want a variable to know whenever it changes, tell me and put it into the console. You can use a reactive declaration for that. So if we go and look at our console now, every time we type into this field, you'll see that it's logging to the console. So what's happening here is this here, anything that is a variable that is to the right of that reactive declaration, it's kind of watching that variable now and will execute anything that happens in that reactive declaration. So because typed message is bound in that input text field, it's changing every time we enter any values into it. And it will now, because we've got a reactive declaration on it, it's going to then run console log because it's watching anything in that particular declaration. And then it'll run that console log for us and print it. So it's a really good way to keep track of variables as they change, or you don't know when something's been set. You can tie it with a reactive declaration there. We're going to use it in a different way a little bit later, but it's just a fun little debugging tip for you. So we know that bind is now working. So let's remove that. We don't need that anymore. So now what we need is a function that will post the content. So what we'll do is we'll create a function. Post message. All of our chat data is here. So let's just add some more chat data. So we'll go push, which is adding to the array because this is an array. So let's add one more item. And let's add one more object to that array. Cool. It's always going to be our message in this scenario. So we'll set own to true. And then we just want the content here to be the typed message. So if we save that and we have a look at if this will post now. Test 1, 2, 3. It doesn't do anything. My Lord. So this is chat data push. We're adding to that chat data. But what's really important with reactivity with Svelte is the equals symbol. So that is what kind of tells the system to go, okay, we need to rebuild the div and something's changed here. So you can do chat data equals chat data. Just that change there. Test. Okay, I know what's happening. Sorry. So yes, we're assigning chat data to push the reactivity, but the button, when we click send, we need to actually say run the post message function. So let's do that. Let's copy that post message. And we want to go on click of this button, run post message. 1, 2, 3. Ta-da! But we've still got that text showing in here. So we'll just use another little bit of reactivity and we'll say, cool, every time we post a message, typed message should be equal to an empty string. So because we've got that equal symbol again, we're telling the system to rebuild the div content, which will clear typed message. Typed message is currently bound to text area. So the binds work two directionally. So when I'm typing into the text field, it's pushing the value up into my my variable. But if I set the variable back to empty, it kind of pushes it back down to the user of what the user sees. And now it's clearing. Okay, so last thing, we'll do a reactive declaration now that will keep track of the typed message variable and keep running and checking the length of it and then assigning that back into another variable. So what we want to do is each time we type in here, we want to keep track of how many characters are in the variable typed message. So we want to keep an eye on typed message and put it into a new variable. Character count equals typed message dot length. So because we've got typed message kind of on to the right of that reactive declaration, we'll be keeping track of that variable and it will keep on updating character count for us. And then when character count is changing, let's pop it into the div. Let's pop it into the div just below here. I don't think it's going to look exactly right, but that's okay. So we've got 0 characters. Test 1, 2, 3. Now that's updating. So what's happening is the bind is changing the typed value variable. Because we've got a reactive declaration here, it's keeping an eye on this variable. And if it changes, if it does, it goes, whoop, and I'll need to update and just run this again, which will then now set character count. So it sees that's happening, it reruns this line again. And what's this line doing? This line is setting the length of type messaged into character count. What happens when you set a variable with an equal symbol in Svelte? It updates the content shown to the user. So character count is changing, which rebuilds the div, and we see the new P updating, which is giving us those extra characters. Very good. So that's a bit more of an in-depth run through how reactivity works. We built a little live chat app with a couple nice examples of reactivity and how you can use it, some for in the actual app itself, some for some debugging purposes. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, add some comments, have a chat with me. I'd love to hear from you. And stay tuned for the next video. Thanks.